Kyle, we are live. How are you today?
Fantastic. Great to see you again, Kent, as always. Very excited for season 2, episode 8. This is one of my favorite parts of Hump Day, of Wednesday, is getting to go live with you.
Me too.
How are you today?
Me too. I really look forward to this every week for a couple of key reasons. One, I always really enjoy our conversations, and then second, it sort of keeps the muscles revved up to know that you've got a live broadcast using a full studio production once a week. It makes you really stay on point and have it all ready to go. I don't know. This is season 2, episode 8. So I think it's pretty unbelievable. We've been doing this week after week after week. We've grown to about 119 subscribers on YouTube right now, and we're seeing
lots of views,
quite a lot and across media, right? Because what some folks that watch this might not even realize is that you watch it on your own channel, but right now, for example, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Twitter, Periscope, and we're live on Facebook. So some people experience the show a totally different way. But I will just ask everybody out there, if you watch this live or if you watch this later, hit that like button. And there's a little bell on YouTube that will let you know when we publish new content as well if you click that. So like and subscribe, or tweet, retweet, share, whatever platform you're on. We really appreciate it. And the channel continues to grow. And Kyle, I think we've got an interesting dialogue set up for today and some tool tips toward the end of the show. So why don't you take us in, and I'll double check that everything's working and we'll go from there.
Fantastic. Action-packed show, as always. So welcome, everybody. For those that have been continuing to watch us every week, thank you so much for your support, and thank you so much for submitting your questions and your responses and your shares. And for those of you that are new, just to give you a quick background, Digitized.live is all about unlocking your digital potential, which means that myself and Kent, we ourselves are in the world helping transform businesses and companies with our various companies that we run, as well as we've come together to understand. And this happened almost like early last year, where we were understanding that the rise of digitization and the digitization of companies and people from analog systems to digital systems really required a voice behind that. As we were getting more and more questions from people that we met around the world when we could still get on airplanes and fly and do our talks and workshops, people are often asking, how do I impact more people? How do I get my business online? How do I get myself out into the world? How do I digitize myself? And so a brainchild of Kent and myself coming together, and this idea came out in this wonderful coffee shop here in the north of California in Marin County, where we realized, digitize, unlocking your digital potential. Let's just create this show and get this information out there on a weekly basis as often as we can to empower people. So what you will see here, which is Digitize, is all about unlocking your digital potential. It's where Kent and I go deep every single week on real-time things that are happening in the world. So if you track back to season 1 or all of season 2, plus a whole bunch of other content, you will see that inside of our video selections, there are probably 50-something videos there, every single one touching on certain aspects about digitization. So we're so excited that you're here. We're so excited that you're watching. Thank you for being a part of this. If there's something that sparks your interest and your attention here, please remember to subscribe, click the like button, share with friends, but also we actively take back feedback. We actively take questions and turn those into shows. So if there's something that you want to learn from us, there's something that you saw in the content that you'd like us to push forward on, please submit that. So today's show, transitioning. So welcome to Digitized Live, unlocking your digital potential. Today, we're in a very interesting position as we have been spending our days watching the digitization of businesses, as we're coaching, advising, consulting, running experiences for people, where we are moving businesses from analog to digital, we're coming up against something very, very interesting, which is all about the value of digitization. It's the economics of digitization. It's the perception of what once used to cost something in a physical world versus what those same things now perceptually cost, and what somebody is willing to invest into in the digital world is completely different. And so what we wanted to do is just, we're going to riff on this one. We're going to go deep. We want to share some of our learnings and understandings. And we also, as it always happens with myself and Kent, is as we're discussing these things, new insights fall out of this, new realizations, new discoveries fall out of this. So we are going to be going, if you're trying to figure out how to monetize your digital experiences, if you're trying to figure out how to transfer the value of your business that was in an analog world where people physically interacted with things, and you've now had to transfer online, and you were trying to figure out what that business model is, you're trying to figure out what that pricing model is, you're trying to figure out how you still offer value to your clients, this is the episode for you. So we are going to go deep and tell you what we know is working, and also maybe illuminate some of the crazy perceptions that are going on right now. So we'll kick off there. Ken, what is on your mind?
So, in our pre-show, we were talking about this, and I was trying to think like what example. But then you just reminded me of something there, Kyle, when you were going over that. I posted on Twitter, maybe I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago, because I noticed a story out on the net that the Cirque du Soleil had filed for bankruptcy protection.
That's right.
So I thought to myself, I was like, gosh, this is Cirque du Soleil has been around for a long time. I've been to their shows. I thoroughly enjoy it. We've also seen a bit of a decline of what we would think of as the older school circus over time for a variety of reasons. And right now, even if there was a circus, you couldn't go. So, gosh, I was thinking, well, that is a business that's truly being disrupted, completely unscheduled, as all disruptions are. And what would I do? What would I recommend if they were to call me up and say, hey, how do I pivot my business model at Cirque du Soleil in order to take advantage of a modern world? And it's interesting. This one was a little bit about digitization, but it's really somebody hashtag the Twitter thing, bring back the circus, which I thought that was pretty fun. But the basis of my suggestion was, well, they've laid off, I think, something like 3,000 people, which are all their performers. That was exactly the wrong thing to do. Why did they have to do that? Bankruptcy protection. Okay, so now your creditors aren't going to come after you. You need to make money to get out of this and find your new business. What they should do is think about this in a distributed, decentralized way. They should digitize all the aspects of taking input, money and feedback. And why not look around the world, see where all of your performers are situated, turn them all into a cooperative as part of your company, again, keeping them as employees, but making them part of the revenue streams in sharing. And then have each say that there happens to be somebody that lives 5 doors down from me that does a really cool performance of juggling. I don't know, I mean, that's kind of maybe with those big steel rings. Why don't you have them roll up to the intersection here in my neighborhood, do their performance right in the intersection. I can come out in the front yard, I can wear my mask, I can watch the circus, they can hold up a big poster with a QR code, and I can pay with Apple Pay. Completely frictionless payments. I'd send them some dollars, whatever those dollars might be, end up on their mailing list. And then also they would encourage me to use my phone, right, to use my cell phone to record that and live stream it and broadcast it and upload it to YouTube. And in that way, I then would be notified of all the other people at all the intersections in all the other 3,000 neighborhoods, potentially 3,000 acts. It would be the biggest circus on the planet. And they could definitely make money, and they could definitely share that money with the performers. Why not? Why not think that way? So this is just an example that popped into my head that I've been thinking about. I'm not engaged with Cirque du Soleil. I don't know anything about them other than the fact that they just filed bankruptcy and I've been to their shows. But I put that on Twitter as a tweet stream, and there's a bit of interaction there, not as much as I would hoped. But I think when you see the digital landscape shifting like this, when you have forcing functions like COVID-19, you have to be willing to think outside of your box, whatever box you're in a whole new way of doing business. So that's the first thing that came to mind for me with that intro today, Kyle.
Yeah, I read that same article, and I, from a previous world, we brought in some of the choreographers from Cirque du Soleil to be expert catalysts, and so I feel very like connected to that community. Once you've met people that help that thing run or design for that, and you see them affected in that way, like it's difficult not to have your, to feel that in your heart for them. And I also read there that they also owe $1 billion in debt. Like they're $1 billion in debt, which is crazy. And I was just thinking about that, because what's interesting in the transfer of this is that when you're going from the analog world and you go into this digital world, you would think for them, in order to, like, they've had to probably prepay venues, they've had to probably prepay licenses, they've had to probably set up security companies and get all these things, because a lot of the time Cirque du Soleil is like a pop-up. It's a big top that arrives in a place in the whole city, and people don't mess around. Like, they want their money up front, so that they can make their money back afterwards. And it's a very interesting thing that as we're moving to this digital realm and those kinds of things, the gestalt effect, like the knock-on effect of what does that now mean for this? And then what does this mean for this? And what does this mean for this? And what does this mean for this? Like, that all hits where we almost have to integrate a lot of those similar types of things. And I was thinking, as you and I chatted about this week, and in our pre-show piece, was this chronology. Like, it's almost like following the timeline of the digitization of the world, which is going through, the forcing function of COVID, even last year with wildfires and catastrophes going on from an environmental perspective, that also started to affect travel, especially here in Northern California, But if you think about the chronology of things that's affecting businesses like Cirque du Soleil, there's a few things that have hit, which, again, as we go back to this value conversation, is that when you physically get in a car and you drive to a venue and you pay a ticket price and you go and watch something, when you move that to online, when you start to move any of those things to not a physical experience but a digital experience, we suddenly are entering a very interesting realm. Because I think what's happened is that where before, say, we were chatting about rock concerts or music concerts, we could still physically go watch somebody, and the closer that you get to the experience, generally the higher the ticket price, or the longer that you're involved in the experience, usually the higher the ticket price. When you take a live concert and you put it online, there's two things that are happening. One is that there's platforms like YouTube and Twitch and others which are just putting content out for free, and people with their cameras are filming aspects of a concert for free. So if I'm not in the live experience, does that diminish the value of the experience that I'm watching online? That's one piece, which is just all these free platforms where there's so much content out there. How do you find the monetization, if it's not a physical experience, to put that live? And I'm also a musician, and our band we were playing a bunch of shows. We've gone to online shows, and it's the same thing. Now what we're doing is we will put up, pay what you think something's worth. That's a very interesting system. But most of it, the new metric for online is how many hits or how many views or how much distribution or how many shares that gets. But the monetization side of it is something that people, well, I'm not going to pay to watch your show. I'll watch the recording of it, or I'll watch somebody else will have streamed it and then just put it up online for free, so I can get around that. That's the one chronology which is super interesting when you go from one world to another. And then the next one where is the concept of subscriptions. And subscriptions has now kind of taken this idea of, well, for one price you get access to everything. If you think of Amazon, if you think of Netflix and Hulu and Disney, and you see how well they're doing. But this idea of subscription, which is, if we know we can get enough people to pay $9.99 a month versus going to a film, which they have to promote, and we can just keep that content out there, they will actually get some pretty like regular MRRs, the monthly return revenue. And that just means they have to put in so much content that the value of like how much stuff you get for this very minimal price is worth the customer's experience. And so I'm finding it so fascinating for folk like you and I. Can I come in your room and play? there's my child is coming in. Not right now, my love. You go upstairs and play with Sky. Daddy's live right now. Okay, I'll be right back. I love you so much. That was my son, who is obviously, this is one of those things. But I wish he could come in. And hang on.
Oh
Here
boy,
he comes.
we're going to get a special guest today.
Special guest today. Here he comes.
All right.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Say hi, everybody in all the world.
Hi.
Hi. Have to go to Scott. Go with Leah. Leah's going to help you. Thank you. So yeah, so there's a couple different things here, which is that I think the chronology of it is that we were able to work so much on time and materials and physical assets, and those kind of had a monetization value. When you move to the digital world, we're noticing that it's quite hard to deliver these same experiences for the same sort of a price. So the concept of like the value-based conversation is completely shifting. I know, if you had any thoughts about that, Ken?
Well, too many probably. And there's multiple areas, right? There's the concept of the business model itself that you're going to deliver. So say, for example, that you've run physical events in the past, and you were pretty happy to pay for the hotel. You were happy to pay for the nice food to keep your attendees happy, for chairs for them to sit in, for an AV crew to record everything, and for a lighting crew. And I mean, it goes on and on and on, the list of costs that it takes to put on a very good, high quality live show. And the thing that I'm seeing is that there's an analog to that in the digital space, but somehow people think, and really it's because they've just been on a lot of Zoom calls, and it's click a few buttons and you're on a Zoom and it's great. And they're like, oh, okay, so I'm not paying for that. It's just a Zoom call kind of thing. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Going from a physical event to a digital event, what's involved. I'll give you a real example. I have an event, we have an event actually coming up in a couple of weeks. It's a summit that's being put on for small businesses. The thing is that when the whole idea for the event started, yeah, sure, it was on a Zoom, and there was 2 or 3 of us on the call. We had a check-in call on Monday. No, what day is this? I don't even know what day it is. On Monday this week. Yeah, it's Wednesday. So Monday this week, there were 15 people on the call, and we're in the process of recruiting 20 or 30 people to help run the actual live event, moderators, session management, audience support, help booth. So by the time we get to the live event, there'll be 30, 40 people involved in running that. And now that's from the beginning of an idea to have an event to actually running the event. Then there's all the back end stuff that goes on to manage a stage that looks nice so that all the speakers can see each other and talk to one another and have a good experience. Point is, somehow in between, oh, I'm happy to pay for a hotel, to I'm happy to create a good virtual space with a great process and enough support, there's a complete disconnect. And I don't know exactly what that is or what it takes for people to get there. I am seeing it change. But you hit on something really interesting, and that's kind of the content as well. And and the value of that content. So let's do a thought experiment. If I walk into your office, Kyle, and I know something that you want to know, and historically you might have paid me $1,000 to come and share that with you, to sit next to you at your desk, click through a bunch of stuff, walk you through it. We spend a couple of hours together. And then, now I can't because of COVID. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Kyle, we're going to do a live call I'm going to be right there with you. I'll be on the computer next to you. I can even control your computer if you want me to and walk you through all this. And it's going to be $1,000. How does that make you feel?
By doing that live,
Yeah,
or maybe
it's
doing
still
that online.
live. It's still live. I'm just not in your office. It's the only difference.
It's interesting. My bias, because this is also my industry, as you know. But I mean, straight out the gate, what's very interesting is my mind goes to what else do I get? Which is kind of funny because I can imagine if I was going to get in the car and drive to San Francisco and go into some big fancy building and you go through all the experiences and your time's gone in and you sit in this place and you see the brand or the organization that's been built and you see all the people humming around and you kind of see the value of it all, you go like, oh, this is probably going to be expensive. Like I can understand all the costs that they'll have, and I'll understand that they have this destination, this place. But you're right, when you go into Zoom calls and something else, unless you have transferred your brand successfully to an online realm and you see a similar sort of presence, which is interesting when you see somebody and they say, well, I cost $1,000 an hour to talk to, but you can't find anything about them online and there's no credibility out there, it makes you question, which is interesting. So then I would say, well, what do I get? You want to go very deep and almost kind of know ahead of time what you're going to get for the $1,000 an hour before they've even begun to talk to you, which is something naturally my instinct goes to that place, which is okay, that's expensive. But if I had to say compared to what, I'm like, oh, well, if you hire a lawyer or if and you think about other worlds, even in the analog world, there's some people we might never see. Sometimes you can deal with lawyers, sometimes you'll never meet them, but they charge you, and most things are even just email, they're just Word documents. But it's an interesting one. I think the feeling, to answer your question, would be I'd be curious when I'm in the call with you to be looking out for what's the value that I get to that equals the compensation in the digital environment, and what else? Like what else? What is that experience like? Would be one of the first things that sort of would show up for me as a first response.
Interesting. So, so I think this is fascinating because, I'm not sure exactly how we get people over the hump, but if you want, no matter what it is, me coming to visit your office, running a giant event, running a small boardroom level event, if you really want the best quality, the same types of people and the same roles are still necessary. What I'm trying to figure out, and what we're talking about, and I mean, we struggle with this in real time. What is it that disconnects in people's minds that has value? Because there's this massive drive toward free for content, for example, but the know-how that a person has to come and teach you how to do something hasn't changed one bit from last year to this year. So, you were talking about this chronology aspect, and I don't have a visualization of this to share right now, but there's sort of this, to bring it back to that, there's this process of change that people are going through and transformation in the acceptance of digital as a like for like stand-in for physical. I'm one of those folks that thinks we're still going to be mostly at home for some time to come.
Agreed.
So if you're one of those folks, if you believe that, then you really do want to be able to get to maximize your value to people. And does what you said mean that I have to provide more and more and more and more for the same return, or does it mean that people will start to realize that the value I delivered standing on your stage and the value I deliver projecting to a video behind your stage is the same? It's the information, it's the content that's coming out. One of the places where I've seen this interesting is a big pushback between recorded content and live content. I think there's something about knowing that you have someone's undivided attention. So if I do a recording and I play it, you might value that less than if I am literally speaking to you in real time. We do the show live because we think that has a different value proposition than the pre-recorded content we create, for example.
Yeah, I've been writing down a few different things here as you were talking, making connections. There's a few tips, or what I would say is what we've learned where we've been able to monetize fairly successfully, between you and I and our businesses, where we've been able to spend the last, what is it now? It's 4 or 5 months on really bridging over. And here's a nice detailed list. I don't know if this shows up the right way, but I'll go through these. You can.
Oh yeah.
So the first thing that I've noticed that allows one to monetize successfully is you got to know your topic. And what I mean, like, I think what's happened is there's been an exponential uptake of everybody throwing a free webinar, having guests come on, having, there's some of the biggest names who have charged the most amount of money are doing 3, 4, 5, 6, even 7. I know Tony Robbins the other day did a 7-day course completely for free, and people just got on and did it for free. Where before those would be, to go out to those kinds of things and private retreats would be tens of thousands of dollars. But 450,000 people showed up for it.
But I have to interrupt you. It was freemium. It was not free. There is an ongoing downstream business model that is very much not free. And I think you're tapping into something really critical there. I think maybe people aren't making that connection. And they think, oh, Tony Robbins did it for free. You should do it for me for free. But if they cut off the downstream business model on the free, then you've got no business and no one can afford to deliver the content. So I that's really important to understand. And this is going to things that online education, online learning, we've known these types of things for a while. There's some amazing, let's just talk about a couple of, I'll give some shout outs to a couple of really cool YouTube channels. Now, whether you care about the particular content on these channels or not is honestly irrelevant for the conversation. They're just two examples in specific content niches. So there's a guy named Parker Walbeck. He does a YouTube channel called Full-Time Filmmaker Pro, I think is the full name of it. His channel is amazing. He's a filmmaker, so he pays attention to every last detail, right, of his broadcast, and it's all pre-recorded. I don't think he does any live shows as far as I recall. However, all that content is free. He shares openly, freely, the tools, how he uses them, what he does to make films. And it's good TV, right, on YouTube. I enjoy it. I learn a lot from his channel. Now, that's not the end, though. After you watch his videos, there's a cross-sell or an upsell for you to maybe take the $29 course. And then there's another, once you take the $29 course, there's an opportunity to take a much more expensive $800 course that will turn you into a budding filmmaker. And then there's an opportunity if you would like to get some live coaching from him and his team. And this is true of Tony Robbins. This is true of someone named Parker Walbeck. There's a guy named Linus who does something called Linus Tech Tips, probably one of the most popular YouTube channels for deep technology tips that there is. It's an incredible production. If you go watch his warehouse tour, you'll understand. Even though all his videos are free on YouTube, that guy's making money, right? A lot of money. And he's making money right now, irregardless of COVID or not, right? Because his business model is not disrupted in the least. It's a little harder to make the videos now. There's a sports-oriented channel called Dude Perfect, which one of my children really likes. And those guys, I don't know their numbers, but my best guess is they're sitting on a $100 million business between sponsorships, media deals, broadcast deals, the YouTube channel, monetization itself, and the in-stream advertising. Plus, if you add in the value of all the sponsored materials, like they give them, Nerf gives them boatloads of Nerf stuff, right? That counts, that is technically a form of revenue. It's a big business. They all give their content away for free, but they run businesses that most certainly make loads of money. So
Mhm.
there's something to this, and I think that, I guess what I'm asking or saying is that there's not a lot of cognizance in a lot of the meetings I'm in anyway, that there does need to be a downstream business model.
Mhm.
At some point, the money has to flow. And if the money's flowing from an advertiser to monetize the content delivered for free to a downstream viewer, well, that's fine. That's called a platform, and it's a particular model. But if you cut
Mhm.
off the advertising dollars, or as is the case right now during COVID, many companies are choosing not to sponsor and advertise.
That's right.
They're conserving capital. Worst possible choice, right? They're actually now starving the new business models that are arising in a purely digital delivery environment.
It's fascinating, that one too, because some of them are holding, and then some of them at the same time are fighting for when you know that people can't come to physical stores, or they can't come to your place of business and work with you directly, and you're going to more platform-based marketing like YouTube or Facebook or any of these other, Instagram and other places that people are doing and starting to drive a lot of their marketing. Um, the idea of what the value drivers are of what those platforms stand for. Are they practicing equality? Are they practicing freedom of speech? Are they practicing just equal rights? That's another interesting one, which is that even with COVID, when you kind of get when the choices get reduced like they are right now of where you channel things, we're also noticing the amount of companies that are signing up to say they won't be spending on certain spaces because they don't believe that the way they're spending. I mean, you and I talk about this often, which is as soon as we're hitting traction, the algorithm kicks in and it suddenly stops people viewing our content.
Yeah, we've
Which is
experienced that. Both of us
and
have
then
experienced that.
and it's like, as the numbers are rising, and suddenly it's like nobody simply says, hey, you're not posting anymore, or how do I get access to your stuff? And then suddenly what shows up on our platform says, oh, do you want to promote this? Do you want to put some money behind this to market it? So, so that the algorithm kicks in, which is fascinating. So there's this, and I think there is this piece, which is that if you want to use this free resource, there is a pay to play. I mean, there's a pay to play with everywhere. So like, I think the second thing over here that we were chatting with is that I just wrote down is knowing your topic. I realized that people will pay when you get more specific and you get more niche. Like a lot of people have been talking about resilience or disruption or all those kinds of things. There's so many, how to manage your life during COVID, and all the content is incredibly valuable. But when you see hundreds and hundreds of these up every day on LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and all these kinds of things, after a while you go, well, I feel like there's enough free resource out there for me to kind of get my head around it. Then it's going to come down to, well, who knows this best? Like, who knows the topic? Like, who's practiced the topic? Who's got the expertise here? Who's got the experience? Who's gone deep? Who's just talking about it? And then who's also practicing it? Who's demonstrated practice?
Yeah.
And worked through the pain of these topics to get to that. That's a very interesting filter that's starting to show up. I think those that wake up every morning going like, this is my topic, they're the ones that are sustaining. Like for you and I, we get together every week, we get together, we drive this topic because it's actually something we do. It's something we believe in. It's part of our business. It's not just, well, this would be interesting to talk about because it's kind of like the topic to talk about. No, it's inherently a part of our expertise. I think the second big one here is this idea of what are those key takeaways, which is that downstream, which is I get something from this, but how do I then stay engaged? Like, what's the takeaway that I can walk away from that makes me want to stay in this ecosystem? That is, instead of the old push model, it's the pull model. It makes me want to stay in this environment. It makes me want to stay in this community. It makes me want to stay close to these expert leaders, these thought leaders, these knowledge brokers. It makes me want to stay there. What are the takeaways that I'm getting? And something that you riffed on, which I wrote down here, was content value. Like in content value, I've realized like where you can start to charge more, or where the business model starts kicking in, is that if I spend a lot of time, if you get access to you and I in a very structured way for a lot of time, there's a value there. If I go into very critical detail and I'm transferring insights and knowledge and hardcore takeaways and like the how things get done in this world, that's a value. And then if I provide you with assets, workbooks, toolkits, those kinds of things, like, some of the top videos on Digitized, which you've also put up, Kent, where you showed like a perfect example as how to, how to get music, into your Zoom,
Yep.
and how to use those music one. That's a perfect example of this, which is when you have content value. It's like, okay, it's a problem everybody has. It's something that they know they need to solve. No one's fully cracked the code. You put the time and energy into it to figure it out. You're going to super detail. In fact, you just put it on live and you walk somebody step by step all the way through, and you provide them with the assets, the links, the tools, all those kinds of things. And you can see how that system works. You scale that system. What I realize is the other big asset over here is this idea of like the level of the challenge that you give somebody. Because for us, we're challenging people every week, and maybe some of this stuff is a bit ahead of its time or ahead of the curve in terms of digitization. But I think where you can charge more money or where you can monetize better online is when you link to a challenge, is when you challenge the person. If it's just information give, you can go to YouTube and you can probably learn anything. Like, here's a funny example. The other day, I don't know how it happened, but my front door, I'm going out for a hike, and I turned the deadbolt. We have our bolts, we have a key system, and then the deadbolt, I was going to double lock the door, and I thought, the lock is turning, and suddenly key breaks off, and it was the key to the front door, and the key broke off in the front door, and I was locked outside the house. Now, what had happened is that we've had some tremors and earthquakes around here, and it turns out when we looked at it, that structurally our house is on a hill. It shifted, and the door shifted so that actually the bolt moved slightly out of alignment. And what I thought was just the deadlock being a little stiff, so I forced a little more, was actually the fact that the entire door structure was out of alignment. So it broke off, and of course I called my wife, and she was in LA at the time, and I'm saying, I just did a really ridiculous thing. I just broke the key off in the door, and I'm like, and it was Friday on the weekend of 4th of July. And so I started looking on Yelp for locksmiths in the area, and I called a few people and no one was available, and people said I could only come next week. So I went onto YouTube and I looked at videos on how to pick a lock, and I was able to pick my own front door lock from videos.
So you feel so secure now.
Completely.
What's funny? I have to tell you, I'm not going to tell the whole story, but something very similar happened to me once. I ended up literally breaking in my own house. I was so scared the whole time that one of my neighbors was going to like see me trying to climb in the window and call the police. But it's my own house, and I had to run. I had to like get through the window and go in and shut off the alarm system and all this stuff. But it was really ridiculous, and it also made me realize I needed to upgrade my home security. But
we're doing it right now. We're doing it right now. We realize, like, when you lock yourself out and you have to break into your own home, and your home really well, it's very quick where you can kind of find the stuff. But
do me a favor there, Kyle. Hold that up one more time so folks can see those few things there. I'm going to read them. So we've got know your topic. We've got key takeaways, we've got content value, level of the challenge, the tiers, free, access, and exclusive, which we addressed a little bit earlier, and then production quality. I think that one's huge. Let's talk a little bit about production quality, and then maybe let's segue into how fast all this stuff's changing.
That's right.
Do you want to hit on that one?
Yeah, sure. So production quality is something interesting. I think when you go through this idea of the level of the challenge, which is like, are you leaving somebody with something to do? Then the tiering side of it is, well, what's the free stuff? And then I believe that what people pay for is access. They're paying for access. Can I get more exclusive access to Kent Langley's mind? Can I get more exclusive access to Kyle Hermans and the team? Can I get more exclusive access to when everybody kind of gets everything and you go like, well, we know there's more behind that. Can you go deeper? I think the tiering system is where that starts to elevate, right? How do I get more access? How do I get more exclusivity? How do I get the insight from you that somebody else doesn't get? That's one way to monetize. But then the last one here, which I think for the digital realm is deeply, deeply important, and it's something that I know you and I pride ourselves on, is production quality. Because what we're dealing with is if you take the norm, just for anybody watching this, think about all the Zoom calls you've had this week. Was there any particular person's production? Like, was there any particular person that you had a Zoom call with, or if you're in a group call where one person's Zoom stood out over the others?
Oh, yeah.
And just ask yourself what that was. Like maybe somebody has a fancy mic, or maybe somebody curated their background. And I don't mean the Zoom backgrounds where you got this weird etchy thing. I'm talking about maybe somebody's curated where they're sitting, like this, like, or was there something that stood out? And how did that? And when that person spoke, or when you noticed that, whether you were actively observing it or not, did it change your experience at all when that person participated or connected? Did you listen to them more intently? Did you wonder how they were doing what they were doing? Did you just think that they showed up a little more prepared and at a sort of a bit more of a next level? It's a fascinating thing. And then so if you start to really produce something, and I don't mean like just bells and whistles without substance. I mean, if you're delivering on those other things, your topic, you're getting your takeaways, you've got super content value, maybe you're being challenged to progress or advance yourself or participate in something, you're getting more access and exclusivity. And if that's curated and produced well, you're going to be light years apart from somebody who's just the up nose shot, Zoom call recording. You're still getting the value, but when somebody's put some energy and effort into the production side of things, it makes us feel like for sure that you're getting another level of value. Like for Digitized, we pride ourselves in this. We set up these shots. We've got really great animated backgrounds. This takes work. It's taken months and months and months of hard graft for Ken to really figure and crack the code on these things. They're not simple things. They don't just come with a button that you click on a Zoom thing or on a YouTube thing. These are heavily curated systems. And if I could tell you how many times Ken has had to break things in order to get it working, the working versus breaking.
I'm a pro at that.
Yeah, but what that means is it's testing and learning so that the production quality and the value is very high. So I think that those are just a couple things that if you're looking to monetize, which is why brand experience and how you show up in your preparation and consistency, as Kent has said, is super, super key. Those are a few things. Any thoughts on that around production yourself, Kent?
Oh, well, I mean, one of the ways we met was we did a call after we had met in person somewhere, and I'm on a Zoom, and I had this fully produced background, not dissimilar to what you're seeing right now on this channel, although I have recently redesigned that. Kyle, you saw it, I think, a week or so ago. And so I literally have redesigned my entire Zoom presence as a virtual newsroom. This has to do with some work I'm doing in the space that's called OTT, or over the top. And so now I have picture-in-picture, I have me as a host like this, I've got me full screen, I've got my slides full screen. I can't demo that on this particular stream right now, but what I will do is I'll try to commit to having a demoable version of that for next time. It has to do with how the studio works versus just running a Zoom call from my normal day-to-day use laptop. But the thing is that what happens to me is invariably I end up in a conversation during the call or after the call, or it's the first 5 minutes of the call of how do you do that? Why aren't you having all of that weird gobbly stuff around you? Why isn't the background subsuming you every time you move? And then you get into talk about lights. You get into talk about microphones. I mean, look here. Look, this is my microphone. It's a huge big thing on a boom with a noise isolation facility. Except that for this particular call, like I'm actually coming to you from this microphone. because I'm experimenting with a new microphone that I got the Wave 1 from Elgato the other day. This is not sponsored, Elgato. You should be sponsoring me. But the Wave 1 does a lot of the things that you were talking about with that video I made about how to drive music into your Zoom calls. If you're on a Mac, this brings a lot of those capabilities to a Windows machine in a hardware-software combination. It's really fascinating, and I hope to do a follow-on video on that because I've been asked over and over. My point is, no one knows how to do all these things. This microphone just came out. I can tell you my first experiments. The reason we didn't have a show last week, Kyle, is because I tried to install this thing at 7 in the morning. Our show's at 10:30. I spent 3 hours trying to fix what I broke. Didn't make it. Didn't go live. So we missed a show. Now, I would never take that risk, of course, with a live production for a client or anything. But the reality is that you get the production quality because you experiment, because you make mistakes, because you break things. And then I get a lot of joy from taking all that experience, breaking everything, and finding the 1 or 2 ways that work, and then sharing what works. It saves people a lot of time, and that's what the loop back Zumba video is about. It's on the Digitized.live channel. But I can't tell you how transformational it's been for me to have the degree of production control. We talked about this yesterday, I think, Kyle, or the day before. To have the degree of production control that I have over what you see, and I do not care if we're all talking in Zoom or Skype or Google Hangouts or almost anything that runs through my computer. I can manage that video stream. And there's software to do this that ranges from free, like OBS Studio, all the way up to expensive, like Wirecast Pro. They have a new name for the top end one. All of this stuff mastering it takes time and it takes effort. But to your earlier point about education and free content, there's so much free content on YouTube. YouTube has become basically the meta LMS of the world. It's the meta learning management system for everybody, everywhere, anytime. What am I trying to say? It is absolutely 1,000% worth the investment that you make to upgrade your production capabilities, even for something as simple as a basic Zoom call. I almost never log in live to a Zoom call without having a produced feed. Right now, you see my microphone there because I just was playing around. And right now, I'm just on a blank wall because, frankly, when I'm running these shows, there's just too many buttons and knobs and things to turn, and I don't really want to deal with a secondary production of my own live stream. And we're just trying to focus on the content here and get it out. So that's what I think, Kyle. And we a couple quick things. Every show, and we're coming up on time. Every show, we try to find a tool or a tip or a trick that we can share that might upgrade your digital life and your digital potential. This week, Kyle asked me a question because I'll let you tell the story, Kyle, but you were trying to do something with one of your clients, and you asked me how to do something, and I said, "Oh, don't you know?" And I sent you a link.
That's right.
Why don't you tell that story to take us out and give people a good tip, and I'll put the URL up as you're telling the story for where they can go get this tool if they need it.
Excellent. Yeah. And so as we get into those tips, I'll put this up one more time. Just remember that for today, if you are looking to kind of advance your digitization and get your financials going, make sure you know your topic, make sure you're getting some really strong key takeaways to your clients, make sure that you're always providing content value, go deep, get details, provide some access, set a challenge for the people that are watching. Get your tier structure going and make sure, as Ken said, increase your production quality, and I will guarantee you'll be able to monetize your business from an analog to a digital world. Now, tool tip of the day. So for myself, I get to travel, as Ken does, all around the world and do keynote speeches. And I happened to be end of last year, just before COVID kicked in. I happened to be out speaking internationally. And what was interesting was that I also managed to get some TV coverage, get some press coverage, and go on some live television shows in those countries. And what was happening, what does sometimes happen is we will get to talk at events, but we don't always get access to the content, meaning like they won't send us the produced video or they won't send us like the footage, even though we try to negotiate that a lot of the time. That's a whole different deal that happens with the production company that the client usually brings in. But what ended up happening was that I was sent a link which had the talk and had some of my stuff up on YouTube, although I didn't get access to myself. And that's great to watch it on YouTube, but how do I get it? So obviously reached out to the client and can I get access? And they were like, well, it's up to the production company, but it's good for them. And so I looked online across a whole bunch of different tools. How do you download or extract video from YouTube or from Vimeo or from any of these types of platforms? Of course, and we've got to put a huge disclaimer out there, don't ever do it illegally. Don't take somebody else's content without checking in. If you happen to rip someone's content, make sure you always give them the credit and always ask permission before you do that. Super important. Otherwise, you could be in some super issues because copyright infringement or using things without permission is very real, and the laws are getting stronger on that. So got to put that disclaimer out there. You got to protect the people who provided you with the value that you're extracting. However, what I needed to do was get access to that content, and I wanted to be able to pull it out so I could edit it. Now there's things like ScreenFlow and there's other things where you can record your screen, but the quality isn't always as good. I'd like to just get the original video. So I reached out to Kent, who generally is the master of all tools when it comes to these things. And I'd been online looking for a bunch of things, but it's literally like, it's like a juggernaut of bear traps out there, which is that you'll say, oh, here's a good clip grabbing software. And you don't even know which button to click on the page. And when you click it, it's suddenly, it could be malware. It could be something that takes you off in a whole different direction, which is not what you're looking for. But Kent was like, oh, you got to use this. And he's been down this rabbit hole too. He was like, but you have to use this URL, which is one of those things where you navigate through all the fake URLs to get to the right program. But if you're trying to get content out of some of those platforms, if you've put something up or somebody else has put something up about you, or there's a clip that you want to use and you can't get access to the original source to send you the original file, the tool is called Clipgrab, Clipgrab, Clipgrab. And I believe that Kent will put the URL up there. Super simple system, very simple system. What it is once you've downloaded the tool, what you will do is go to the URL in your browser. You'll paste that URL into the Clipgrab thing. It recognizes the video you're trying to grab, and then you're able to actually extract it. And what it does is it goes into, I guess, to the platform where that is stored, and it is able to download it. And it generally only works, from what I've noticed, I think, with Facebook videos, Vimeo videos. I don't think it works on Instagram. It works with YouTube, but it doesn't work with private. So if somebody's embedded a video on their private link, it doesn't access those, because that would be a complete violation. And right in there, it'll have either Creative Commons, which is that you can say like, hey, you're free to use this or free to replay this, just give this person a mention. Or there is one which basically said this is property of YouTube. As soon as you upload it, it's kind of, they get to use it how they want to use it for their ad rolls and monetization strategies. And then of course the person who put it up, there's generally always a way to get hold of them. So you'll see who uploaded it. There's generally a profile. Sometimes if somebody's done it, there's a contact number. So if you want to rip something that isn't yours, get in contact. But Clipgrab is the way that you can do that. And for me, I was able to then actually get access to the content of which I was talking at the event that I gave, but where I didn't even realize it was being shot, for one. The second was that when I was part of the event, we never got access to talk to the production company, but then they put up all of that content. So Clipgrab, that's the tool tip of the day. Use it very wisely and make sure that you are crediting and supporting the creatives that put out the content that you may be using. But it is a very powerful tool. So thanks again to Kent for another great discovery there. And that's been one that's been able to help me get access back to my own stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. So let's wind it down, Kyle. Thanks so much again for a great conversation today. As always, I think we covered a lot today. We covered information around the economics of digitization, things about what it means to take an event from the physical to the digital, what it means to take your content from digital to physical, the business models inherent in doing so, from subscription to pay-as-you-go to freemium, and how that can impact your revenue flows, especially when your downstream clients or your partners don't understand those models. I think that was a particularly interesting thing. We talked a little bit about, actually we didn't get into that today, but maybe we save this for the next time. The breakneck pace of innovation in streaming media. It is insane. I mean, the amount of software updates that are coming out, the amount of new features, the amount of completely new capabilities, and a consistent making it easier to do certain things that required extremely expensive sometimes gear before. Maybe this is something we can get into in a next show, Kyle, because I'm sure people would love to know kind of what the latest and greatest is, and how they can do things. And I can even potentially show samples of live shows that I've helped people get online and run on their own. And maybe that would be an interesting way for us to empower the audience out there. But other than that, again, thanks to my co-host Kyle, and thanks to everybody who watches our show and likes and subscribes and shares and hearts and favorites and forwards. We really, really are grateful for that. And as Kyle has said to me, a phrase he likes to use is, "We really appreciate you," and thanks for everything. So with that, I'm going to take us out.
Unlock your digital potential.